She had nothing but the streets. He had everything, except a heart that wasn't broken.
Oh, there's a ring in here. Wait.
One mistake, one moment, one night that changed everything.
Let's show them who you really are.
You brought a stray to a war, Jason.
She's not a stray. She's the only thing real in this room.
When pride burns and love rises from ashes.
No more pretending. Be real with me. Stay.
The rooftop sparkled with string lights and a skyline view that could make anyone fall in love. Anyone, except Isabel. Jason Holt stood beneath the open sky, heart pounding, holding a velvet ring box and a bouquet of rare calla lilies, her favorite. His tailored tux clung to his tall frame, but nothing could shield him from what was about to happen. "I can't do this," Isabel whispered, just loud enough to shatter him. A cold wind swept through the rooftop. Jason blinked, stunned. She looked away, avoiding the trembling in his eyes. "You're brilliant, Jason, but you feel empty. You don't love. You win." Silence. Without another word, she turned and walked toward the elevator, leaving him alone with the city and his silence. Jason's hand tightened around the bouquet. His jaw clenched. His fingers slipped, and the box tumbled to the ground. The $80,000 diamond ring gleamed in the moonlight like a cruel joke. He picked it up, shoved it into the petals, and stormed down into the cold night. Minutes later, he was downstairs on a quiet street near Times Square. His anger fizzled into something colder. Numbness. That's when he saw her. A girl standing on the sidewalk, her hoodie torn, her face smudged, but her eyes alive. She held a cardboard sign that read, "Not asking for money, just hope." Jason scoffed under his breath. But then, "Can I take a flower?" she asked, pointing gently to the bouquet in his hand. Without a word, Jason shoved the entire bouquet into her hands, ring and all, and walked away into the dark. She blinked, confused, then her eyes caught the glint of something inside. A diamond. She stepped forward and began to follow him. Jason's polished shoes echoed against the pavement as he stormed down the deserted street. His thoughts, a swirling storm of rage, humiliation, and disbelief. The nerve. Isabel had rejected him like he was some broken toy she'd finally outgrown. He tightened his fists and increased his pace. He left his car and driver behind. He needed to walk. He needed to clear his head. But behind him, soft footsteps persisted. He turned sharply. "Are you following me?" The girl froze. Her oversized hoodie hung past her waist, and her hands clutched the bouquet like it was sacred. Her voice was quiet, but steady. "You gave me something. I think by mistake." Jason scoffed. "Keep it, sell it, throw it away, I don't care." "But you do," she said softly. That stopped him. She stepped forward, her eyes, brown and defiant, meeting his. "You don't throw something like this away unless you're trying to hurt yourself or someone else. Either way, I'm not letting it end up in a trash can." Jason rolled his eyes and turned back toward his gated townhouse. She followed. At the gate, the security system beeped as he scanned in. She waited just outside. "You can go now," he muttered. "No." "No?" His voice hardened. She looked up at him with calm fire. "You gave up. On your girl. On yourself. I fight for scraps every day. I get ignored, rejected, humiliated, and I still show up. But you gave up after one no." His hand froze on the gate. "What did you say?" he asked, barely above a whisper. "I said," she repeated. "You threw away your bride and ran instead of fighting. And you tossed a symbol of love like garbage." She placed the bouquet with the diamond carefully on the ground beside him and turned to leave. "Maybe you don't deserve it." Jason stared after her. He should have walked inside. But instead, he called out, "Wait." "Wait," Jason said again, louder this time. Lena stopped mid-step. She turned, cautious but curious. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Are you hungry?" She hesitated. Her pride flared, but her stomach betrayed her with a low growl. "Yes, but only if it's not charity." Jason studied her for a moment. Something about her raw honesty tugged at him. "Then consider it an exchange. You gave me truth. I'll give you food." 10 minutes later, they were seated in a quiet, upscale restaurant where Lena clearly didn't belong. At least, not anymore. Her hoodie clung to her, damp from the evening chill. Her hair a tangled curtain around her tired face. The aroma of grilled salmon and warm bread hit her like a punch to the gut. When the food arrived, Lena didn't wait. She devoured it with silent desperation, stuffing down the hunger of 2 long, empty days. Jason watched, caught off guard by the heartbreaking way she fought not to cry between mouthfuls. He'd never seen hunger up close. It wasn't pitiful. It was survival. "Slow down," he said gently. "It's not going anywhere." She paused, wiped her mouth with the napkin, then smiled faintly. "Can't take chances with life, can we?" Jason said nothing. Something in his chest shifted. "What's your story?" she asked after a long sip of water. He opened his mouth to respond, but his face suddenly darkened. Across the room, at a candlelit corner table, Isabel leaned across to whisper into the ear of a sharply dressed man. Damien Cross, Jason's ruthless rival. A venture capitalist who once tried to buy Jason out of his own company. The same man who called Jason's startup a castle made of glass. Lena followed his gaze. "That her?" Jason nodded, jaw tight. A sly fire lit in Lena's eyes. "Let me help you win her back." Jason stared at the scene before him like he was watching a slow-motion car crash, one he couldn't stop and couldn't look away from. Isabel laughed, tucking her hair behind her ear as Damien leaned in closer. The same Damien Cross who had tried to publicly humiliate Jason at a tech summit last year by offering to buy his company for a fraction of its worth. Now he had his fiancée too? Jason's fingers curled around the wine glass. Lena looked from Isabel to Damien, then back at Jason. "You still love her?" Jason didn't answer right away. "I don't know, but watching her with him, it hurts more than I expected." Lena leaned forward, her expression calm but certain. "Then you need to remind her who you are, the man worth fighting for." Jason looked at her, caught off guard. "Why are you helping me?" Lena smiled sadly. "Because no one fights for anything anymore. And maybe if I help you win your love back, the world makes a little more sense again." Jason stared at her for a moment longer, then gave a faint, almost reluctant nod. "There's a gala tonight," he said. "High-profile fundraiser. Damien and Isabel will be there." Lena's eyes lit up. "Wow, that's perfect. Just get me a simple gown and I'll handle the rest." Jason blinked, caught off guard, for the second time, by her certainty. "You're serious?" "I said I'd help you," Lena said, standing tall despite her worn clothes and tangled hair. "Let's make her see you again." Jason stared at her again. "All right, we've got 4 hours." As they stepped into the cold night, neither of them realized this wasn't just about winning back love. It was about discovering something deeper, something that couldn't be faked. Jason's private driver pulled up to a discreet boutique hidden in a side street of Manhattan's Upper East Side. It wasn't flashy, but it was exclusive, the kind of place where money whispered instead of screamed. Lena stared at the elegant glass door, suddenly unsure. "I can't go in there like this," she muttered, tugging at her hoodie sleeve. Jason glanced at her. "You said you'd handle the rest. Let me handle this part." Inside, the staff blinked at Lena's appearance, but snapped into action when Jason uttered 2 words. "She's the guest of honor." What followed was nothing short of a rebirth. Lena stood barefoot as a stylist gently detangled her hair, revealing soft waves that framed her sharp cheekbones. Her face, once smudged with city dust, glowed under careful hands and warm lighting. A makeup artist highlighted her expressive eyes that had seen too much but still held hope. Then came the gown, midnight blue silk, simple, elegant, hugging her body just enough to remind her she was still a woman, not a shadow. She stepped into silver heels, unfamiliar but empowering. When she emerged from the fitting room, Jason stood with his phone mid-air and forgot how to breathe. Lena twirled awkwardly, suddenly shy. Too much? He took a step closer. No, just right. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Something electric passed between them, unsaid, but felt. You ready? He asked finally. As I'll ever be. She smiled. Outside, the limo waited. The city lights shimmered in the distance. But as they slid into the car, Jason's phone buzzed. A message from his assistant. Damien just made a major announcement. Be ready for anything. Jason frowned, heart skipping. What kind of announcement? The gala glittered like a dream laced in secrets. Crystal chandeliers bathed the ballroom in golden light as the city's elite floated in gowns and tuxedos, laughter echoing like clinking champagne glasses. Jason stepped inside first, looking every bit the stoic billionaire, sharp black suit, expression unreadable. Then Lena entered. Conversations paused. Heads turned. Gasps whispered through the crowd like ripples across water. No one recognized the girl who had once begged for loose change 2 blocks away. She wasn't just beautiful. She was radiant, like a secret finally revealed to the world. Jason offered his arm. You're stealing the spotlight. I thought that was the plan, she whispered, her smile trembling with nerves. He led her to the center of the room. Cameras flashed, people stared, and near the stage, Isabel froze mid-sip of her wine, her smile wilting. She wasn't alone. Damien Cross stood beside her, grinning like a cat with a cornered bird. He raised his glass toward Jason mockingly, then took Isabel's hand. Jason's jaw tightened, but Lena squeezed his arm gently. Remember, you're not here to win her back. You're here to remind her what she lost. They walked past Isabel and Damien, pausing only when Damien called out with a venom-laced smile. Jason Holt, didn't know you upgraded your taste. Lena turned, voice cool. Strange. I was just thinking he upgraded from wolves and silk. Isabel blinked. Jason stifled a laugh as they walked away, Lena's heels clicking like applause across marble. But just as they reached the dance floor, the MC stepped up to the microphone. And now, he announced, a very special moment. Damien Cross has a major announcement. Jason and Lena turned. Damien smiled wickedly, and Isabel looked guilty. The crowd hushed as Damien took the stage, savoring every second under the spotlight. His perfectly tailored tux gleamed, his smile smug as ever. Jason stood still, Lena's hand still resting lightly on his arm, both bracing for whatever storm was coming. Damien tapped the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, I'm not just celebrating success. He threw a quick glance at Jason. I'm celebrating justice. The room stirred. 2 years ago, I attempted a partnership with Holt Dynamics. Jason rejected my offer, said I lacked vision. Well, he chuckled, I've since acquired controlling interest in Holt's second largest investor, Silicon Monarch Ventures. Jason's eyes widened. Lena whispered, what does that mean? It means, Jason muttered, he owns a third of my company, without me knowing. Gasps echoed, but Damien wasn't done. And tonight, he added with a sickening sweetness, I'm proud to introduce my new partner in business and in life. He turned and held out his hand. Isabel. She walked toward him slowly, eyes not on Damien, but on Jason. The silence felt like thunder. Jason's throat tightened. No. Isabel took Damien's hand. Cameras flashed. The crowd applauded, confused but entertained. Jason stood frozen, like someone had ripped his ribcage open in front of the world. His ex-fiancée, his greatest rival. And the company he'd built with his bare hands, now partially owned by the man who wanted to destroy him. He turned to Lena, barely breathing. I brought you here to win her back, he whispered, voice breaking, but she was never mine to keep. Lena looked up at him, her eyes wet but strong. She did you a favor, she said. Now it's your turn to take your heart back. Jason clenched his jaw. No more pretending, he said. Then took Lena's hand and walked toward the stage. Jason's footsteps echoed with purpose as he walked toward the stage, Lena by his side. The lights caught their silhouettes, One man on the verge of public ruin, and one woman who had nothing to lose and everything to give. The room watched in stunned silence as Jason took the mic from the MC without asking. Even Damien looked thrown. Isabel's smile faltered. Jason's voice rang out, steady despite the storm within. "Before this night turns into a circus, let me say something." He glanced at Damien, then Isabel. "I lost something tonight. Not a company, not a woman, but an illusion I clung to for far too long." He turned slowly to the crowd. "I built Holt Dynamics from a basement with nothing but a rented laptop and a sleepless drive. And yes, I made mistakes. I was closed off, obsessed, but I never sold my soul." A beat passed. "Some people do for a percentage." Lena looked at him, stunned by the fire behind his calm. Jason continued, his gaze shifting to her. "And this woman beside me? She reminded me what strength really looks like. She didn't need a spotlight to shine. She's lived through hell and still smiles. That's not charity, that's character." The audience murmured. Cameras turned. Even a few claps echoed. Jason took Lena's hand, lifting it gently. "So no, Isabel, I won't be chasing what's gone. Because tonight, I've already found what I never knew I needed." A silence swept the room like a tide. Damien stepped forward, sneering. "You think a speech changes anything?" Jason smiled, sharp, unshaken. "No, but the new investors I signed before this gala might." Damien froze. Jason turned to Lena and whispered, "Let's dance." They stepped into the center of the floor. As they danced, the crowd watched in awe. And Isabel? She realized she'd lost far more than a ring. The orchestra shifted into a hauntingly beautiful waltz as Jason and Lena moved together across the marble floor. Under the shimmering lights, they looked like a vision stitched from two different worlds, one from the shadows, the other from a skyline. But somehow, they fit. Jason's hand rested gently on Lena's waist. For the first time that night, his eyes weren't scanning the crowd. They were on her. "You've done more for me in one day than Isabel did in 3 years, he said, voice low. Lena smiled, but her gaze dropped. "You don't mean that." "I do," he whispered. "You walked into my life from the cold and gave it warmth." She shook her head. "I'm not the girl people like you fall for. I don't even have a last name anymore. I've slept on benches, eaten from trash. You don't fall for people like me." Jason stopped mid-step. "I just did." Lena froze. Her heart thudded so loudly, she feared he could hear it. But before either could speak again, a voice cut through the music. "Jason," Isabel said, stepping onto the floor. Lena stepped back instinctively. Jason didn't. Isabel's eyes glistened, her facade crumbling. "You didn't even try to fight for me." He looked at her calmly. "You didn't give me anything to fight for." She turned to Lena. "He's just using you, you know. This isn't real." Lena raised her chin, proud and calm. "Funny. That's what I thought about you." Jason extended his hand to Lena again. "Shall we?" But just as she reached for it, a sudden crash echoed from the hallway. A waiter rushed in, whispering urgently to security. Then Jason's phone buzzed. His company's servers had been hacked, and all fingers pointed to Damien. Jason stared at the message on his phone like it was a detonator. Massive breach. Holt Dynamics servers compromised. Source: internal IP linked to Damien Cross. The room spun, not with music but murmurs of chaos. Security moved swiftly, and whispers turned into gasps as Damien tried to slip out the back. Jason didn't flinch. He looked at Lena. "Come with me." They pushed through the startled crowd, straight to the foyer. Jason flashed his credentials, storming into the security room just in time to see the live footage, Damien handing off a flash drive to a man in a catering uniform. The CEO didn't yell, he didn't threaten. He smiled. Because finally, Damien's mask had cracked in public. Half an hour later, police walked Damien out in cuffs, press swarming like vultures. Isabel stood frozen by the doorway, abandoned. She met Jason's eyes with silent pleading, but he didn't stop for her this time. He only had eyes for the girl waiting outside, barefoot now, heels in hand, gown rustling in the wind. "It's over," he said softly. Lena looked up unsure. "And what happens now?" Do I go back to the street with a dress I can't afford and memories I shouldn't keep? Jason shook his head. No! He stepped closer. I don't care where you came from. I care about who you are. You stood by me when I had nothing to offer. You saw me when I couldn't see myself. She tried to blink back tears. I'm not your world, Jason. He smiled. You are my reason to start over. Then, slowly, he dropped to one knee. Not with a ring, but with his heart in his voice. No more pretending. Be real with me. Stay. Lena's hands trembled as she reached for his. I was waiting for someone to see me, she whispered. You just did. And beneath the Manhattan skyline, a homeless girl didn't just steal a heart. She healed one. Hope you enjoyed the story. Subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories. Catch you on the next one. Cheers!